So,
I see it. Recording started. Right on.
okay. Shh, don't say it. I'm just joking. So, man, I wanted to know what you've been up to, like kind of projects you've been working on, and I know you guys kind of shifted from the regular, um, print schedule to a more curated schedule towards like Kickstarter and crowdfunding, and then you have other projects. So, what are you guys working on right now?
So yeah, here at Aspen, we've really streamed our basically our publishing line down to. I mean, we focus now on one book at a time for months on end, which is great because it helps us kind of stay focused on creatively what we're looking to achieve with each book. And it's been fun because we're able to world build more. We're able to focus more on character development. We really want to make these books mainstream for everybody out there, not just the classic comic book direct market. I mean, not that there's anything wrong with that direct market. We love it. It's something that we've built our business on, but we also, we want to get Aspen books and characters out to the greater world. And so we felt to do that, we needed to kind of take a focus shift on the direct market route and go more mainstream with it. That's kind of why we've shifted to the crowdfunding model, is because it helps us to basically reach new fans. I think as a comic creator, that's what you want, is to be able to reach new audiences with your stories and to be able to touch people in ways that, creatively they are looking for. I think nowadays with entertainment, everybody is kind of used to seeing the same things. There's you look at entertainment mediums like film, TV, and animation, video games. A lot of stuff I feel looks backwards. It looks at the past and it kind of keys in on people's nostalgia. That's great, but that's not what's going to build an audience for the future. When I grew up, I had these characters that there was nothing that came before that was like that. You look at stuff like GI Joe, Transformers. Those were very based in their own universe. They had their own kind of creative flow that it wasn't something that was a remake. It wasn't something that you kind of can look back on and say, well, when I grew up, this is just another version of that. So, at Aspen, we've always kind of taken that mantra of let's, take these characters that Michael Turner created, but also look to the future and look to see what new avenues we can press forward and pioneer into that haven't really been touched. And so crowdfunding for us was a fun little avenue. It took about 3 years for us to really wrap our head around the landscape, because I mean, we're an indie publisher, so we always feel like we're out on a bubble creating stories that people either, are not going to see, or that they might just not be able to kind of get into because they're so used to your big two standard superhero stories. So we had to figure out our angle. And I think in terms of any indie creator out there, or any creator in general, like, you have to find your angle. You have to find what appeals to your audience, but also people that aren't your audience, people that might find out about your work and be into it, but they weren't actually looking for that. They just wanted to be entertained. And, as a creator myself, that's what I always go back to. It's like, you know, I want to be entertained when I'm creating something. I want to write something or edit something or coordinate something that makes me excited. I think that's missing a lot of times in, the creative mediums, is even in my short time in like film, TV, video games. It was very business oriented, and that's not to say that you shouldn't focus on that stuff, because it's important. You're obviously running a business, but you want to be entertained. You want to be able to find things you love in the work you do, because ultimately your audience will respond to that. I mean, everything that I love in entertainment, you can tell that the creators loved doing it. You can tell that it's something that they cherish and it means a lot.
Mhm.
And this kind of goes back to what we were just talking about earlier. It's like, time is just a relative thing when it comes to creating fun entertainment. And if whether it takes you a year, 5 years, 10 years, if your heart's into it and it's something that you love, your audience will respond to that, you
I
know?
agree. Yeah, you're right. Mike has created his own thing from the beginning, and people still respond to it. You guys have a lot you could work with now because with the other books that you guys did or we did, there was already a lot of it that was out there, or a couple of volumes at least, and issues. But with this one, you practically have how many pages total did he draw of the
He
book?
he did, like, I would say less than 20 pages, which is
Yeah.
crazy when you think about it, that we've had to come up with a brand new story off of less than 20 pages of actual art. But it's also a tribute to how amazing Mike was, that he literally did less than one issue of a series, and people are still asking about this thing. They want to see it come to life. And just based off of the characters and the designs that he showed in the 3 or 4 covers that we released, people were excited, and 20 years later we still get asked about it. So I think that's a real tribute to Michael Turner and the kind of creator he was.
Yeah, he inspired obviously a lot of people like myself, and I mean, part of starting the production company I have is to do documentaries, especially on people that I admire and look up to, and I feel like their story should be told in a certain format. So obviously, I started filming one um, late summer, and I had to go through the process because it's like, well, if you're gonna go out of your way to do this as it is, you might as well do it correctly and properly and do the person justice. So I feel like there's going to be enough experience where I would like to, I'm putting it out there, to do an ecos documentary, or Mike kind of involved with that, because I love the process of creating books. And I feel like when you put the process out there, people appreciate the medium more because they see how much goes into it. It's not something that you just pay $3 for. It's like, okay, I'm done. It's like an album or a song. Sometimes it takes decades, a year, 2 years to write 3 minutes of music. And if you think about how short that is, but it's all this passion condensed into like a certain amount of time, and it becomes timeless. And I think that's really what art is.
Yeah, I
So
can't think of a better
you know what I
person to
mean?
want to do something like that. You not only because of your obvious creativity and talent, but because of
Sorry, I'm having trouble with the connection.
oh, Siri,
Try
Siri,
again
Siri
in a
just heard me.
moment.
Because of your just connection with Aspen, and you've been a big part of the 20 years of what we've been through and what we've created up to this point. So I mean, yeah, that sounds like something that would be an amazing project, and I think we'd be honored to have you do something like that.
I mentioned it to Joe B when we were doing our Lady Mechanical live stream. He's like, "Yeah, that'd be cool to do a Mike documentary." I mean, it's. I feel like that story's got to be told, and if you hear it enough times, you're like, "Well, I think this is something worth pursuing," because everybody still remembers Mike. They still remember, and I feel like he's a part of that generation where. I mean, he was definitely a superstar, and I mean, Frank and I talk about it at shows all the time. Like, he definitely who knew how to make people feel and everything, and his work, it speaks for itself. And the friends that he touches, which I think is the more important aspect of it, is the people he touched, whether it's friends or fans, they all had the same feeling about him. So um it's he's a legend, right?
Yeah.
So that said, now that the industry is where it's at, I mean, it changed. Everything changes every few years or so. And I think part of being a publisher and then a talent yourself, you have to be able to see years, months into the future, especially when you're planning books out and stuff. Like, and I understand like a few years ago it was kind of tough to figure all that out, but we all figured and managed all that. So um how do you see someone starting, especially in writing nowadays in comics or a creative medium?
hmm I
Like, you get that a lot. I know you do.
I have a lot of thoughts on this. So it's a great question. There's 2 points that I love to tell new creators when they're trying to, not, I don't say break into comics, because I think that's an old term nowadays. You're
Mhm.
not really breaking into anything, because there's so many different ways for you to have your voice heard nowadays. I think the old model of comics used to be, I want to work for Marvel or DC. I want to have my comic book be in comic book shelves. And that's great. That's a great goal. I think anybody who wants to aspire to do that, go for it. There's ways to do that. But nowadays, it's 2023. I think breaking in is kind of an outdated term. I think really what it is getting your voice out there. And I tell new creators there's 2 things. One, and this is the most basic part of it, is if you're like, I'll say it as a writer because I'm a writer, from the writer's perspective, but I think it applies to art just as much. Just start, like literally start, because I talk to so many writers, and I talk to even more artists. um, the biggest thing is the ones that I see succeed are the ones that take that leap of faith and they start working on something no matter what. A lot of times, if and this, as a writer, I run into this a lot. Your brain starts to give you reasons for why you shouldn't do something.
Yeah.
You start piling on all these. Okay, well, if I wrote a comic book, well, then I would have to have money. Oh, then I'd have to know publishers. Then I'd have to know a printing company. Then I'd have to know an artist. Don't worry about that. Start writing your story, and some of those things will fall into place. It's crazy how once you start, you'll start to inspire yourself and you'll start to find out that the story writes itself. That sounds so cliche because I tell that to every artist and every writer that I meet at conventions, or if I do their portfolio reviews through email. I say your story will write itself. Your brain, I think, as a writer functions in that way. It's like I always look at it like, you're constantly laying that bridge ahead of you, even when you don't see the bridge. You're just looking forward and you see this giant pitfall, and you're so afraid to fall in this hole. But as you start to write, you realize, okay, I can do this. Oh, okay, this needs work. Oh, you know what? I never thought about this. Oh, this is exactly what I wanted. All these things start to fall into place. And before you know it, you have 5 pages written, you have 10 pages drawn, you have 15 pages of a script. Comic book scripts from that perspective, they're usually only 20, 22 pages for one issue. A lot of times nowadays you'll see 48, 64. But you'll find that 22 pages is very easy to write. It's much more easy than you think. And I think I was just thinking this driving over here to the studio. I was thinking, it's easy to write comics. It's not hard at all. It's all the other mental aspects in your brain that you
Mhm.
have to grapple with. And I say grapple because your mind sometimes will try to give you reasons to get out. It's like you're driving on the freeway of creativity, and all of a sudden you start seeing the exits, and you're like, well, I'll just get off here because it's easier. And your brain starts to tell you, hey, it's easier to do that. Just get off the next exit. But it's the creators that stay on that freeway of hope, and you just keep going. Those are the ones that ultimately will get their goal. And yeah, you might get 22 pages, and at the end of it, you might say, this isn't exactly what I wanted, but it's something,
Right, right.
it's something that you can start off of. And I think that is what I tell everybody. It's like you have to start, especially as a writer myself. That's the biggest challenge I run into with all new writers is they start to give me excuses for why they can't do stuff. Oh, I can't do it because I don't have enough time. I have a regular job. My family isn't supportive of it. My friends say that I work in a fast food industry. I'm not a writer. Everybody who wants to write is a writer. If you want to put something down, if you have ideas, put them down on paper. So that's the simple part of it. The other part of it, and it's much more ethereal, you have to put your voice out into the world. That sounds kind of spiritual, and I don't want to come off too like preachy off a high mountain or something,
So
but
meta.
I know. But the world works that way. If you put your goals out into the world and let your voice be heard, and people start to understand who you are as a person, they'll support you. I mean, I worked at I've worked at two comic book companies, and I've always been seen as an editor, but at some point, about 10 years ago, I said, no, I want to be a creator myself. I have all these ideas. I want to put them out into the world. And when I did my book Syria, which I'm still working on now to this day, we're working on issue 3. I was petrified. I didn't know if people were going to respond, if people were going to say, who is this guy? I've heard of him from different comic book companies, but what has he done? And then I was at a convention. I want to say it was Wizard World Chicago. No, it was C2E2. I was at C2E2 about 8 years ago, and I was now maybe 6 years ago. I'll say 6 years ago, uh, and I had this idea for my book, and I had Joe Benitez, who you've worked with, obviously, who created Lady Mechanica. He had drawn up the design for my character, and I was keeping it close to the vest. I didn't want to put it out there into the world because I was scared. I'll be honest. That was kind of a fear I had. I was like, I think people are gonna hate this thing. I don't think they're gonna like it. My brain was starting to give me reasons why I shouldn't do this, and I was just at that con one night, and I was inspired, and I had spent the day talking to all these different creators, and that's always a plus when you can kind of get into a community of different creators and bounce ideas off them. And I went to my hotel room that night, and I said, you know what? I'm putting this out into the world. I'm going to let my voice be heard. And if people respond, then I'll know. So I sat there, everybody was going out, having fun. And I sat in my hotel room, and I made a giant Facebook post about it. And I said, here's what I'm coming up with. This is my idea. I'm going to be doing this new comic book. And here's the design. Nothing was ready. Nothing. The character was never colored. There wasn't a logo. There was only this one character design and the concept I had in my head. And I said, I'm putting it out into the world. And so I let my voice be heard. And here we are, 6 years later. I'm working on the fourth book total of the series, which by crowdfunding, terms, that's a good amount of time. Going back to what we were talking about, the older method and direct market. I mean,
Mhm.
I worked on series. I wrote one series in 2018 that was 30 issues, and they came out over the span of 12 months. But with crowdfunding, you have a little more leeway to be more creative. I love that because you can really put your heart and soul into a project, and the fans understand that. And so I put that out there into the world. I let my voice be heard, and lo and behold, people responded. People really loved what they saw. They loved obviously Joe's design. Joe's an amazing designer, and I like to say the rest is history. And so right now, we're working on basically issue three. I've just written the pilot episode for the television series, which we've been kind of shopping around. And I have a great idea for. I, I like to do things a little different than other people. I spent a year and a half meeting with producers all around Hollywood. They didn't understand what I wanted. They wanted to make it something that was generic, something that was very based into what everyone else is doing. And I said, no, I don't want to do that. This book started as a grassroots book with, just an idea, and we never followed the rules. We did everything that everybody said don't do to put this out into the world. So with the film that we're kind of working on with it, we're doing it very much, Robert Rodriguez style, where
Oh, yeah.
we're not following the Hollywood model. We're doing it our way, and I mean, I'm loving it because I one of the things that I said when I first started to shop this out to producers and people in Hollywood is like, I'm not giving this up so that somebody else can basically come up with their vision of what
Yeah.
my creation
Yeah.
is. I think a lot of creators in comics, they create just to be able to say, look, I sold this to Netflix and I made $100,000. But at the end of the day, this is your vision, and you should be involved in that. As a comic creator, I've seen for 20 years people from Hollywood take, ideas from comic creators and make profit off that, and they don't. It doesn't go downhill to the comic creator. So
Mhm.
when I started doing my stuff, I said, "Look, I'm going to be involved. I'm going to write the screenplays. I'm not a screenwriter. I don't know how to do this stuff. So I've been learning on my own. I went and basically figured out how to do all this stuff, but because I want my vision to ultimately be something that came from my heart. And I think at the end of the day, as a creator, it's always coming from here, and you don't want to ever lose that. So that kind of goes back to what I said with the more ethereal approach is put your voice out into the world, let people understand who you are and what you're looking to achieve, and people will respond. It's like the old field of dreams adage, if you build it, they will come. And that works in comics. Just one, start, two, put your voice out there and let everything else take care of itself, and it will. And then I will add a third, and that's obviously the more practical thing is you got to do it. You got to be able to do the things you don't want to do. A lot of comic creation isn't about writing a story or drawing pages. It's about coming up with a logo design. It's about making connections
Mhm.
with the right printing company. It's about understanding how to work with a team. It's about all these little ins and outs. But to me, that's the fun thing. That's the 9 to 5 part of the job. That's
Mhm. Mhm.
if you want to work in comics, you got to know how to do that stuff because that's gonna, you're gonna run into that, and you'll get it. It's easy. It's so if I could give the people out there who are like on the fence, who are like, I have an idea and I want to make a comic, do it. Like there's nothing stopping you, and there's no one thing in comics that says you can't do it. We need new creators out there to really make important, entertainment for people to enjoy for the next 100 years.
Yeah, I think we need to fill out the industry, if you want to call it that, or the medium. Let's put it that way. We need to fill it out with more stuff and make it full because I feel like right now it's heavy in some aspects and then really light in some. Because I asked somebody like last week, well, what would the approach be? Would it be digital? Would it be print? Are we being narrow minded? I mean, the distribution is nowhere near where it used to be. You could look at it and get scared and worried, or you could see it as an opportunity because change is bound to happen. It's almost like it kickstarts everything, no pun intended,
Yeah.
into a different direction. And I think if you really love the medium enough, you're going to find a way to make it work and to make it thrive because I can't imagine a world without comic books. You know what I mean? Whether it's I mean, holographic, whatever. I don't think it's ever going to get there. Like comic books is beautiful for a reason. Just like music, you're always going to listen to music. whatever the format may be, it all depends, right? Yeah, yeah, I know. Starting is the hardest part, and then starting and then being overly, I mean, and I've been guilty of it like most people, like, you get really ambitious, but that's part of the learning process, is like you get humbled and then you take a different approach, but at the end of the day, like you said, it may take 5 years, may take 10 years, may take 2 years, which would be insane if it did, but, all these people who are out there creating and who are really good at what they do and they've, made a name for themselves, they started way before anybody knew who they were, and then you think that it's like, "Oh, I've only seen them on 2 issues of whatever a comic book is," but they laid the groundwork 10 years before, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, you can go back and trace the line of most every creator in comics and find trash artwork or trash writing that they did in the past. It just is the natural order of things. And
You have to live with it. You're just like, "It's there, it's out there."
And they would tell you, they'll be the first people, the most talented people will be the first people to tell you, my early work was trash. But you know what? I got out there and I jumped on that horse and I rode that thing all the way to my successful period now. You know what I mean? And that's how you have to look at it because I think, and then this goes back to what I run into a lot when I do portfolio reviews is you run into the people that want to be the superstar with their first project. It's just not going to happen. I mean,
Mhm.
the chances of that are so rare. And sure, it does eventually or occasionally happen where somebody will put out one piece of work and it just hits on every note. And maybe they spend the rest of their career trying to chase that same first project, but that's very rare. That's I would say, the anomaly in the timeline of most creators. Most creators, from my experience, you put out work, you're probably not that proud of it when you first start. You know you can do better, but you're excited and you can never go back to those first few projects you work on where there's a level of excitement and there's a level of just, it's scary and you're doing things that are new to you and you're putting all of your heart into it. And sometimes you lose that aspect as you get further and further along in your career because you're so jaded. You've worked on so many projects, you've been to so many conventions, you've met all your heroes that you grew up idolizing. And at some point, and this happens with a lot of creators, is you get to a point where you're like, okay, I can hang in this industry. I know what I'm doing. And you lose a little bit of that edge that you had when you first started, because when you first started, you didn't have any of these certainties. Everything was an unknown. And you were very much kind of on the edge of that cliff, looking to take that first leap of faith. And there's just an adrenaline rush to that first, like, that first little area of your stage of your career where you don't know what's going to happen next, and you do have to make it so that you're going to survive. I always tell people, I'm like, and this kind of goes back to your point of, like, you can work on projects for 5 years, 10 years, but the beauty of life is you have to pay bills, you have to survive. And there's a commercial aspect to everything, whether you like it or not. I mean, you could talk to Peter Jackson, who did Lord of the Rings. At some point, he had to, get his film out. He did work on it for as long as humanly possible. This is a commercial industry like anything. You have to, at some point, you have to put stuff out because you have to pay your bills. And so there is that kind of a leveraging of, like, okay, I want to be the most creative artist I possibly can and spend the most amount of time developing this amazing story. But at the end of the day, it's like you have to come out with
You
something.
have to deliver, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
and I think that's that
yeah.
kind of overhead pressure that's always kind of keeping you in line. And I don't say that as a bad thing. Like, you want that type of pressure because, one, it keeps you honest. It keeps you understanding that, yeah, I mean, you could spend, a whole lifetime on one project, but if the world doesn't see it, is it really worth your time? I mean, is it something that you just wanted to do for yourself? That's fine. There's people out there that are amazing talents that never put their work out into the world. They just do it because they love it, and that's just something they do.
Mhm.
Uh, but most creators want the world to experience their work, and that's the beauty of comics and as an art form, is that it is an art form, and you want people to see it and enjoy it. And what I you said earlier, the perfect word, you want to touch people. You want people to be able to resonate, or your work to resonate with them. You want them to find your work and want to be inspired to do their own stuff, or at least I do. When I create something, my goal is not to make a lot of money. My goal is not to have something that it turns into a film. Those are all great goals, don't get me wrong, but I really want just the audience to feel something inside that really motivates them. I want them to feel what I feel when I see something amazing, when I watch a film or I see a television show or read a book that just blows me away. It makes me want to run to the keyboard and start typing away and come up with my own stuff. I love that feeling, and I would love to have my audience have that feeling and enjoy that with me. To me, that's the ultimate goal. I've been doing this 20 years, so more than that, 25 years in terms of different comic companies. But I just want people to look at my art, when I'm gone and say, you know what, this stuff touched me, this stuff inspired me, and it made me feel something inside, and I think that's the ultimate goal of any creator because that lives on beyond any bank account, beyond any,
Yeah.
comic sales record. If your work stands the test of time, you're truly a talented creator.
Yeah, and I think that those other things like the financial benefits, they kind of are inherent to you touching people. I mean, the world is not I mean, people do recognize that, and even if they don't, there's people who are always gonna recognize it. There's somebody for everybody, you know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. And I love that aspect of it where I can name off 10 of my fans right now who only read my work, and that to me is the most amazing thing. And it's almost like a little selfish goal where I'm like, look, that's so cool that these people
They're
they
mine.
don't like they don't like anything, but they love my work, and that to me is the ultimate tribute to your work is to find that audience that loves your stuff. And they could be small, it could be big, but I think if you touched one person, it's a work of art.
Mhm, mhm. I agree with you, like, I know all my fans, like, the ones that showed up in, Amsterdam. I mean, I whenever I think about them, it makes me wanna cry sometimes, but I know them personally by their name, the things they buy even, their habits, like, the stuff they post sometimes if they've had a couple of them have had surgeries and all that, like, that kinda stuff, like, when I make something, I'm thinking about those 10 people, and I realize, like, once you touch them, you've done your job, and everybody else is gonna respond regardless, and it's not even something I really would focus on personally. Like you said, as an artist, you just focus on the craft. You just have to believe that it's gonna do what you wanted it to do, because we are communicators too as artists, we communicate emotions, feelings, and these stories. There's a communication route to it. That's why there's music, there's screenplays, and books and comics. It's all a communication medium, but where emotions are driven and stories, stand the test of time. There's stories from, I mean, I dare say 1,000 years ago that we still hear about. I mean, they've taken different forms, but it's essentially a story that someone came up with. They've said and told verbally, and now and now we write stuff down. But like that's how powerful it is, and I feel like it's very important. I'm not overstating it. I mean, we are drawing comics and stuff, but there is an importance to it. Like I think we take our work seriously ourselves, maybe not so much. I mean, like obviously, because then it gets really personal when you start doing that, right?
I
It's
think if
not personal. If
I
someone doesn't like my stuff, it's not personal. It's just
I think if you take yourself too seriously, though, too, the fans start to, gravitate towards, other creators. Just because it's like, you want to enjoy people that you feel like you can relate to. And I think
mhm,
what you said is dead on, but it's also we're blessed to be able to live in the greatest era of comic creation because we can reach out and talk to our fans. We can
mhm,
talk to them through social media. When I started in 1998, I started at Image Top Cow, and I worked for Mark Silvestri, and he had millions of fans at that point. I don't say millions. I don't know. That's probably a large number, but he had all of the comic book industry who knew who he was. But you couldn't talk to him because there was no social media, there was no internet at the time. I mean, when I worked for him, he was very much one of the last eras of creators that created, and the only way that you could connect with them was through their work. Nowadays, creators have so many options that you have these fans that love your work. You can talk directly to them through your Facebook, through your Instagram, through your Twitter, and there's a just an amazing value to that. I think that so many creators nowadays just overlook because they I don't know what it is. I think they spend too much time in their own mind with their own creations sometimes, or they think that that's beneath them. But I looked at it as like a huge value.
mhm,
You can reach out to every single one of your fans, these people who want to love you, and really just make a one-on-one interaction with them that could last a lifetime. That's so valuable to me. And I cherish that. I mean, I look at every single person who reaches out about my work as a potential lifelong fan, and so I treat them like I treat them above family sometimes, where it's like, if you're my fan, you're somebody who's out there trying to support me, trying to support my livelihood. I mean, why wouldn't I turn around and want to give you all of my attention? And that I think is a little bit of a lost art in terms of nowadays with social media. Everybody gets a little too we're spoiled, we have so much at our fingertips that we kind of lose sight of what exactly we have. It's like we're able to connect with everybody one on one, and those people will support you for the rest of your life if you let them, and you
Mhm.
keep that connection strong. And I try to make them feel like the most valuable fan on the planet, because they are. I mean, I have one or two fans that they will buy everything no matter what it is, and you can't buy that level of success. It's just something that comes from one-on-one interactions.
That's true, and, you mentioned Robert Rodriguez and his form of filmmaking. I was actually watching an interview with him, this recent interview. I try to scrounge around for stuff of him because for a while you couldn't get a hold of any of that stuff, and now he's doing interviews with his sons and everything. They have, like, that film studio in Texas. It's, like, really inspiring stuff. So, I mean, like, with art, I go to different mediums to find the inspiration wherever I can, and people who are just out there doing things that they love and they're successful at it, but they're legends for a reason, like they're passionate and they found a way to make it a living also, and then staying true to who they are. So it's definitely not impossible, and they treat people well, and I think that's, if you have that formula, there's no reason why you should be unhappy. And I think we've all been there where things are just really rough, but at this point, I think because things are so different, there's no reason to look at it in such a negative light, because you're right. We are kind of narrowly focused on how things used to be, but now we're spoiled because we have all these things. And I'm like, you could look at it as a negative because it seems like you're competing, but I don't think that you are. There's somebody and people for everybody, some kind of fan base or people who love your work. There's more people now exposed to your stuff. So you just have to find a way to get it out there, like
Yeah,
you're saying. So,
if another creator is making hand over fist money, that's not taken away from your career. It might seem like that. I mean, there's
it
just
might be helping you actually.
yeah, exactly. I mean, they're pouring more money into an entertainment form that
Hmm.
more people should be, supporting. But also, it's like I don't, it took me a while to actually get to that point, because it's human nature. You see other creators doing well, and some of your inner thoughts are always like, man, I wish I had
I
a
wish.
fraction of that guy's success or that woman's success. But at the end of the day, it's like they're not taking away from anything you can do. In fact, they are probably helping you in a lot of ways, because they're bringing more eyes to the art form.
Hmm.
But as a creator, I think you got to kind of just not think about that, because that's not your work. Your focus should be on your stuff, what you want to do, and how you want to further your career, and all the rest will take care of itself. And you know what? You might not ever reach the success of other people. You won't. I mean, there's always going to be somebody who's more successful. There's always going to be somebody who has a bigger fan base, but that shouldn't be something that ever hinders what you look to do with your career. That should honestly just be something that you support them on, and cheer on your fellow creators, because like you said, it's like a rising tide, elevates
Hmm.
every ship in the sea. So it's like you want to be able to support those people, because ultimately more eyes on our product, it's only going to help
Hmm.
all of us. And
Yeah.
tell you how many times I've read a work of art or read a comic book and ended up becoming friends with that creator a year or two later, because I wanted to be their fan. I was like, this is awesome. I got to meet this person. I'm going to reach out to them through social media. And a year or two later, you're working with that person. It's just that's
Hmm.
how you got to approach it, with an eternal optimism.
I agree.
And always just I like to support your people, support the people around you, because at the end of the day, when you need it, they might support you later, and but yeah, I agree. I wouldn't Don't focus on what you don't have, focus on what you have, especially when it comes to comics, because you do have more options than the creators from 20 years ago. Even if you don't think you do, anybody who can open a Facebook page,
Has an option.
you're already like 10 steps ahead of all those guys in the 80s and the 90s and the 70s. Those creators didn't have that option. They weren't able to reach a mass audience with the click of a button. So take advantage of those things. It's like, look at what you have. Don't look at what other people might have that you think you deserve. Because at the end of the day, deserves a word that,
Nobody deserves to use.
yeah, exactly. You're not owed anything in life. It's all stuff that you create on your own. And at the end of the day, if you approach it, and that sounds kind of harsh, but it's not really a negative thing.
No, it's not.
It's like we go through life and nothing's guaranteed. But if you give yourself the chance to have these opportunities, you're going to succeed more. You're going to be able to find those little holes that somebody put out there in the world that you can dive into and make a living off of. That's kind of what I've done with my approach. It's like, I wrote a character about a rapper in hell. I was like, there's never been a story like that. Why? I feel like there should be. I love rap music. I think hell is a cool, underworld type environment that there should be more stories about. I'm just gonna make this story. I'm gonna put it out into the world. And I think a lot of creators need to do that more. It's like, find their niche. Don't worry about what other people are doing. Worry about what you need to do, and get it done, and just start. Just going back to what I said,
Just start.
yeah,
Yep, I know. I know. I guess the goal for this, if you're watching this episode, your goal is to write 5 pages within a month. That's just the start, and see where you get with it, and see how you enjoy it and like it. And maybe you don't even like writing, or you thought you did until you did. You're like, oh damn, this is like doing invoices and inventory. Yeah, it's no fun, right? I mean,
yeah.
really. So I
Well,
mean, yeah,
it's
right?
I've written over 300 comic books, and you just hit on exactly what I do and how I approach every single story. But one, I will say, if you're not having fun, find what does seem fun to you. Find what makes you happy, because that's more important than anything. But two, you hit it on the head again. It's like, when I approach a story, if it's like right now, I'm working on a 120-page graphic novel for a European publisher, and I basically, it's a daunting task because I'm like, 128 pages. That's a
That's a
legit
lot of comics, really.
graphic novel. You know what I'm saying? So I did the math in my head. I said, okay, why am I? Don't look at the big 120-page number. Look at 5 pages a day. And if I can do 5 pages a day in 10 days, you have almost half of that story written.
Mhm, mhm.
And you just got to approach it like that. And that goes kind of exactly back to what we were talking about earlier. It's like, you just got to dive in there and start. You got to get those 5 pages out there on paper. And then the next day you'll have 10 pages. The next day you'll have 15. In 10 days, you'll have 50. And by the time you get to 50 pages, you'll go back to the first few pages and go, you know what? I need to tweak this a little. This needs a little fixing. I'm going to refine this character's development here. All these things will start to just pop up.
Mhm.
All these amazing ideas that are like, I would have never gotten to this point if I just didn't start. You got to just start and get that stuff down on paper, whether it's writing the words, drawing, sketching.
Outlining or something.
Yeah, you just
Or
got to.
even writing the ending. For me, sometimes I don't know what the beginning is like, but I know what really drives me about the story. If it's in the middle or the end, you just write it
Yeah,
down, right? Or if it's the beginning, you can start wherever you want to. But the bottom line is it kind of grows from that point. That's what's nice about stories. It doesn't have to grow from the beginning. I know that there's formatting things, like if you're doing it professionally, that you might want to reel it in a little bit. But when you're first starting, you just want to find what drives you, right? And how it becomes something. And yeah, I mean,
the
that's how I do it. So because I'm an artist first and then writer second. So
There's no right way to do it, and that's the beauty of comics. Whereas, yeah, if you're working in film, generally there are a lot of rules, I think, that people like to follow with outlines and using specific formats. But with comics, man, we're lucky to have this Wild West atmosphere where it's like,
still, yeah.
I've read over 200, 300 outlines in my day, and they all are different.
Hmm.
There's no right or wrong.
Even the formatting's different.
Yeah, you're basically just jotting down ideas out of your brain, and that's all it needs to be. You don't have to don't worry about format. Format is the killer of creativity in terms of people that are trying to start, because once they get into their head of, oh, well, I don't know how to do this. I'm not I didn't go to school for this. I don't understand the right format. There is no right format. You just start typing your ideas coming out of your brain, and the story will take care of itself. Whether you, like you said, if you want to work on the back end of the story and let the beginning start to develop as you go, that's okay. I mean, that's going to be a trickier portion in terms of, like, you'll have to go backwards, but
Hmm.
that's, there's
Yeah, you're
nothing wrong
starting.
with,
Yeah,
yeah,
you can
there's
set to put
nothing
stuff
wrong with
down.
that. I'm a
Yeah.
more linear creator. I tend to just start from page one and go from there. That's
Hmm.
just how I approach it. And I know it's probably not how a lot of people do it. I think a lot of people, like, we'll start with the middle, the back. It doesn't matter. I think the biggest thing is just the start part. And
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, it's to me that's the fun part. But I will say the outline, it's definitely the one part that I think the most people that I've run into have the hardest time starting because it's the scariest part. Because that's the first time you're
You have
putting.
to know everything about your story, or you think you do.
Yeah, well, you have to really start putting stuff down there, and it's like, it's so easy to drive in your car or walking out, you're walking on a hike, and "Oh, I got this great idea. This is gonna be an amazing story." But putting that amazing idea in your brain into an actual, like, Word document, that's all to me, like, the hardest challenge of coming up with a comic book. Everything else is so easy. Coming up, like, if you need a logo, find a designer, or if you're a designer, a great
Mhm,
artist, do
mhm.
it yourself. If you need printer, they're all out there. Just Google, man, use Google. You people love to get paid, and those people that work in those industries, you'll find them, and which goes to one last little part I'd like to add on to the creation part is, financially too. It's good to be able to, be a smart and responsible person when it comes to your finances. And when you want to create a comic book, you have to treat that like you're going shopping, like that's your new shopping. Because I, I'm not a rich man, and so when I want to create a new comic book, I can either do the comic book, or I can go buy myself a new pair of shoes, or go buy clothes at the mall. But I can't do both. So I have to really, that's when I have to be a
Mhm.
responsible adult, and you start to sacrifice. And I think sacrifice is a word we haven't brought up today, but it's a huge one because you have to sacrifice at some point
For your
for
art,
different.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where. Um, when I do a lot of portfolio reviews, most of those people have full-time jobs, and they're so reticent to want to give up that security blanket of, like, I get paid to do this, or this is what I do. So you have to kind of leverage that, and you have to be able to say, look, if I want to come up with a comic book, you're going to sacrifice. You're going to have to pay the artist. You're going to have to pay, the
Everything,
designer. You're going to
everything, everything costs money.
and I don't want to sugarcoat that aspect, because there
Oh,
is
no,
the aspect.
it's not, yeah, exactly.
We've talked about a lot of positives, but to create a comic, there are going to be
It's
points where
worth.
you're going to have to financially sacrifice. But I would say as a tip, go to conventions, go out into social media, join groups, find like-minded individuals who want to help you, because there are people that are also trying to, there's designers, there's production people, they want to work too, and they're willing to work with people that are just starting out. Those are the people you need to find, because they're going to help your bottom line. It's a business, and you want to be able to work with people that aren't going to kill your business. You don't want to, you can't pay a certain amount to this person, that's fine. Find somebody else who's just starting out, might want to be able to help you in that regard.
Yeah, I was actually gonna ask you about that. I'm so glad you said that because that's very, very important. Like, there's a lot that goes into comics, especially because now that I'm doing it, I want to be thorough about learning and studying and figuring everything out. And yeah, we don't have to sugarcoat that. That's out there, but that's part of the fun. I realized, like, I started to learn how to talk to lawyers, and
Yeah.
I enjoy it. I talk to them, I chat with them, and they have interests and they do things just like other people. But I just find the things that I normally don't like doing and trying to make it enjoyable. Like when it comes to writing scripts, I'm like, well, I'm going to format it all pretty so I can look at it and it looks cool because I'm visual. I mean, if whatever I have to do to trick my mind into enjoying some aspect of it, it's fun. It's if if you dread doing something, it's going to be dreadful. So
Yeah, and
yeah.
that's a great point, is that, the reason you hire professionals to help you on these projects is so you can focus on what you do best. And I love to write. I love to create the stories, and I'm not talented in those other avenues. And so I know that, and that's part of the acceptance of that is, look, I'm going to pay a little more for a more professional, talented person to do that for me, because
Yeah.
I want to do that. When it comes to, like, fulfillment for one,
Oh
uh,
yeah. Oof.
I did my first Kickstarter, and I shipped every book myself, and that was over 400 pledges that, I almost died. I was like, doing this again. I cannot ship 400 books and still come up with the stories and want to function on a daily basis. It's just too much
Mhm.
work. I had to come to the understanding that, look, I'm going to pay a little more. I'm gonna, sacrifice more of my bottom line and get a fulfillment team and people that are more talented and professional, and that's what they do. And it took me one issue to figure that part out, but now I'm at a point where I have a talented fulfillment team. I trust them, and I treat them like any other member of the team. I think that's how you also should approach things. Is like, look, you might be the creator, and that might get into your head sometimes as a new creator. You're just like, well, I'm the creator and I've come up with this idea. But you're just one cog in a giant machine. And if you want your creation to really succeed, you have to treat every single person you work with as just as talented and just
Mhm.
as amazing as you,
It's
because they are.
special, yes.
Yeah. And they will in turn, they will respond in turn and give you that level of commitment that you can only find from people that you reciprocate that with, and
I agree, yeah,
it's a
for
fun journey.
sure. It is, it's fun. I mean, and not to discourage anybody, but also not to let anybody think that it's super easy to do this either. So don't be discouraged, but at the same time, it's not a cakewalk. But we get to make mistakes and learn, and then I think that's all you can expect from people that are doing this. So I'm excited, man. Like it's really cool to get to talk to you right before I get going on my project, and hopefully mid-January once Lady Mechanica wraps up and we do the second half of the Kickstarter. But I've learned so much, and I'm just super excited to do it. So
That's the best part about speaking with you is I already know it's gonna be a smashing hit because I know all the time and energy and sacrifice you put into your career. So I have no doubt. I mean, I'm just a big fan like everybody else. I mean, I've probably told you this throughout your career, but I'm one of your biggest fans. So for me, it's like I get just as excited to see what you're coming up with and what you have on the plate. And I'm here and we're waiting and we're ready, but there's no timeline on it. When it comes, we'll be ready. And we know that you're gonna do it and you're gonna do it well. And I think that's the fun part of being a fan is just supporting that creator no matter what. And I know that you're gonna kill it. I can't wait.
well, you're gonna get a phone call too. So this is all a really long interview process, isn't it? Yes,
Oh,
Vince.
this is awesome. This is what I live for. One aspect of being an editor is that you work with amazing talent all the time. And at comic book editors, we get a bad rap because people only think of the rejection part of like, oh, I reached out to the editor and I didn't get what I wanted. But I spend most of my day helping creators and talking to people and making sure that their careers are, going off on the right path. That's where I get a lot of joy, and it helps inspire me. I talk to pretty much one or two creators every day that are trying to get off the ground and get their journey started, and it reminds me of where I was and what I needed to do to get that
Mhm.
thing started. And it's just motivation. So working in comics is you have to try to find those seeds of motivation everywhere you can.
Oh yeah, man.
Yeah, especially, we've been in comics for so long now that it gets harder and harder as you get more invested in the world of comics because you'll never, like I said, you'll never go back to those early days of when you were just everything was live or die. It's like you're back in high school, where every little moment mattered so much.
Mhm.
You lose that little magic, and you're always trying to refine that, rekindle that little spark of motivation. But I love it. It's something that I'll be doing for the rest of my life, and I just enjoy the thrill of constantly motivating myself to come up with new ideas and entertain people.
Well, there you have it, folks. I think in a nutshell, in less than an hour, you've given me everything without me even like prompting you that
Yeah,
I
you know,
expect from a writer editor person,
I
right?
appreciate that. If I could give just anyone out there, even if it's just one person, just that little spark of wanting to get out there and bring their creation to the world, I'm happy with this hour we spent because to me that's gold. I just genuinely hope anybody who's watching this just finds that inner peace that they're looking for to get started because you'll be shocked at how quickly and how amazing the journey will get off, and you'll be able to really bring something fun out into the world. We need more of that. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure, man. Well, thank you for your time on a Saturday and right after Thanksgiving.
Oh,
Nobody's in the office, so
I was
I
so
really
excited to do this. Thanksgiving came and I was like, oh, I wonder when we're gonna do this. And then you texted me and you were like, let's do it again. We talked about Saturday. I'm like, I'm on. Let's get this going. I
Woo! We
watched the
did it.
videos too. I see your YouTube channel, and I was thrilled that you and honored that you asked me, and I couldn't wait to get on here. And just like I said, I just want to see more awesome, talented creators out there doing things, and I hope we've hopefully inspired, a few of
I'm
them out
sure we
there
did.
today.
I'm sure we did. I know we did. So I appreciate this time, man. And it's really nice to be able to actually chat with you. Like I don't think you and I have ever like for a whole hour chatted,
Yeah,
right?
I
So this
know,
is
right? I mean,
so
maybe on the phone just about stuff not comic
work and
related,
y-
but
yeah.
I think this has been a really awesome, experience. And as we've grown as creators, we've gotten so busy with our time and our schedules that invariably we've been able to. There's just been less time for us in our careers to be able to sit down and just talk
Mhm.
tactfully about our journeys and about what people should be doing in terms of comic creation. So this was a blast. I had a blast. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. No, seriously, thank you for coming in on Saturday. Well, I don't know if I feel sorry for you though. There's not that much traffic in LA on Saturday,
Oh,
is
it's
there?
it's it's no problem at all. It was I live for a lot of people that don't know, I live 5 minutes away from our Aspen
Oh,
studio.
that's right. That's right. You
I can't
do.
take too much credit for, but it is a Saturday. And I'm definitely looking forward to enjoying the rest of the weekend. And I hope you guys out there are you'll probably be seeing this later. But yeah, it
Yeah.
is Thanksgiving weekend, and we're def-
Yeah.
we're in chill mode still. So it was,
Yeah.
but it wasn't hard at all to get up for this. I was looking forward to it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, man. And I'm sure everybody's gonna appreciate it. I don't doubt it in my mind. Like everything you said was gold. So
Awesome.
diamond hands, dude. Well, well, you have a good weekend, and I'm gonna bid everybody adieu right now.
Thank you, Tia. Bye, everyone.